So we're going to start. We're holding Perek Chavchet, chapter 28, Sefer Mishlei, towards the very end of this book. Pasuk Aleph. Nasu ve'en rodef rasha v'tzadikim kfir yiftach. The wicked flee without a pursuer, but the righteous are as trusting as a young lion. Very cryptic, the pasuk. Try to figure it out without looking at the mefarshim, without looking at the commentaries. Difficult to understand, except for one word over here that does give us a clue. The word nasu, to run away, ve'en rodef, and there's no pursuer, reminds one of one of the kelalot in the Tochacha, in Parshat Kitavo. Unfortunately, the Torah lists what will happen to the Jewish nation if they should not get the message the first time around. Things will get harder and harder until they eventually figure it out that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not happy with them. Part of the problems that they will have is that they will have a fear or a certain anxiety without a pursuer. It's one thing for one to be afraid if he knows somebody's in back of him, somebody's threatening him, but to see no pursuer, to just be afraid. I'm told that a lot of Holocaust survivors still have nightmares. They think that the Gestapo is coming to pick them up. Anybody who lived through 5-6 years of Gehenom, in what it was the Holocaust, it is quite natural, quite normal for him to have these fears and the dreams and nightmares. And that's part of the kelalot. The kelalah, one of the kelalot is that nasu ve'en rodef. You run away, there's no pursuer. There's nobody behind you. What are you afraid of? Why are you still afraid? The fear is in them. The fear of the unknown, the fear of the past. When I was in Portugal a couple of years ago for a visit, there were Jews in the northern part of Portugal. They were still afraid of being known as Jews. They didn't want people to know them as Jews. They still had those memories in their families. Something that occurred 500 years ago during the time of the Inquisition, that they were pursued, that they were treated as second-class citizens, or they were threatened. That is just one idea of what this expression means, nasu ve'en rodef. However, here the context is a little bit different. It's not talking necessarily about some fear. It's describing the difference, one of the differences between a rasha and a tzaddik, a very important difference, and that is the lack of bitachon in Hashem. Whereas a rasha many times relies on his own knowledge, on his own experience. When he's therefore in trouble, when he finally meets up with trouble, and he sees that he cannot rely on his own experience or on his own knowledge, then he runs away. He's afraid. He doesn't see a solution. Even if he has attorneys, he still has a fear of maybe he will end up in prison, maybe something will happen, because he has no bitachon in Hashem. So there's nothing for him to do other than to just be anxious as to what will happen. The tzadikim kfir yiftach. Kfir is a young lion. A tzaddik always has bitachon makadosh baruch hu, so therefore there is no room for dagot. He doesn't even know what the word worry means. It doesn't exist in his lexicon, in his dictionary. Worry about what? Something is going to happen, there's nothing you can do about it. If it's not going to happen, then why worry about it? You see what I mean? A whole different attitude. Big difference between the tzaddik and the rasha. There is explained that there's another difference in the way the two live. A rasha overspends. He lives beyond his means. He charges everything to his credit card. And before he knows it, he has accumulated a lot of debt. And what happens when you accumulate a lot of debt and you don't pay? You have debtors that are going to go after you. So he has to run away from the debtors. He has to declare bankruptcy. He has problems. And that is only because of his lifestyle. So nasu ve'en rodef rasha, a rasha, because of his lifestyle, because he overspends, he ends up running away from those that he owes money to. And there are people like that. They may not be rashaim, but they live like rashaim. They borrow, not realizing that it's beyond their means. It's impossible or very difficult for them to repay it back. But tzaddikim, they are calm because they don't live above and beyond their means. Mistapkim b'mu'at, they're very content with just a little bit, and they try to avoid having to borrow money from people. Next pasuk, v'fesha eretz rabim sareah u'be'adam mevin yodea ken yarich. Because of the sin of a land, its princesses are many, or its ministers. Because of an understanding, knowledgeable man, so will its retribution be delayed. Also a very difficult pasuk to understand. The first half of the pasuk is talking about mismanagement. When you have many ministers in a government, that is a recipe for disaster. Why? Because for the most part, ministers are out there for personal gain. They're not out there to help you. And if you have many ministers in a government, more than what you really need, there's going to be more room for corruption. So this is a problem for a country, Shlomo Melech says. The Fesha Eretz Rabim Sareha. Why is it that they have so many ministers? It's because they must be sinful in their ways, that Hashem has given them many ministers, which will only lead to more trouble. Unfortunately, this is a fact, that politicians are not always out there to help us, even though they make promises all the time. He makes us aware of this, that they're out there first of all, for themselves, not for us, not for people, not for the citizens of the land. However, B'adam mevin yodea ken yarich. The land, the government can succeed if you have one knowledgeable person, one person who's not out there for himself, one who really wants to help. All it takes is one individual, the right individual, and he can make a big difference. That's the simple explanation. But the commentaries talk about here about the one individual that can postpone or delay any retribution coming to the land. This individual is out there to try to correct people's mistakes, to try to call attention to their corruption, and to bring them back b'tshuva. As the rabbis tell us, "B'makom she'en ish yishtadel liyot ish." If you are living in a community or in a country where everybody's corrupt, everybody's no good, everybody steals, it doesn't mean that you should be like them. We do not believe in the Roman saying, "When in Rome, be a Roman." You heard that saying? Even though there's some truth to that you're supposed to follow the customs of the country where you're in, but if it's something that's no good, it doesn't mean that you should adopt that. Rabbi tells the makom she'en ish ishtadel liyot ish. If you're in a place where nobody's an ish, nobody's behaving themselves, everybody's corrupt and wicked, you try to be the good man. It doesn't mean that you can't fight City Hall, then join them. Is that the other saying? That's how it goes? Yeah. You can't fight them, right? No, I think it goes a little bit differently. If you can't beat them, join them. City Hall is something different. But in any event, the idea is that many people just give up and become like everybody else. The Rambam very much emphasizes that if you're in a bad location, get out. Because to survive in a bad neighborhood with the wrong element, bad influences, is very difficult. Very difficult to survive, to be a God-fearing person, a righteous person, when everybody around you is the opposite. The environment very much affects us in the way we behave, in the way we think. The Rambam says if you have to go live in a cave, go live in a cave if there's nowhere else to live, but don't live amongst the bad people. Here the problem is that amongst the bad, there may be some good individuals. And it could be because of those few good individuals that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is holding back any retribution, any punishment from coming down to that community, to that country. And that is why a person should be encouraged that it could be that for his ma'asim, because of his deeds, he's tipping the scales. As I think I told you once a story of a great man who had passed away and appeared in a dream to another individual in town. As long as I was alive and said Tehillim every day, this city was spared from all sorts of troubles and calamities. Now that I'm gone, I'm warning you. You have very few merits left. There's no protection anymore to this city. Any day something terrible could happen. One individual can make a difference, he says over here. And therefore one should not say, well, everybody else is no good. The majority is no good. I should just be like them. Next pasuk. Geber rash ve'oshek dalim matar sochef ve'en lachem. A poor man who oppresses the poor is like a flooding rain that leaves no food. Imagine somebody who was poor and became important, became prime minister. People might have some hopes. Oh, he will be understanding, he will be sympathetic of the poor, because he himself was poor. Not necessarily, it doesn't always work like that. On the contrary, if somebody was once poor and he continues to cheat, it's worse. In other words, his way of dealing with the situation will be worse than somebody who is rich and has understanding of how to run the country and how to manage it better. He compares a poor man who cheats the poor as a flooding rain that leaves no food. A flooding rain, what does that do to a field? It destroys the field. Not only does it not allow whatever is there to grow, but even whatever was there already that grew, it is destroyed. So this individual don't have too much hope in him just because he was poor that he will be sympathetic. On the contrary, there is always a chance that he will not manage things properly. And things will be worse off with him than without him. And since he mentions the poor man who is worse than the rich man in this situation, in other words, the way he will treat the poor, he should have been compassionate, but obviously when he's not compassionate, things are worse off than before. The next pasuk is understood, because the next pasuk talks about those who have studied Torah once upon a time and have left it. What could happen to them? Ozve Torah yahlelu rasha v'shomrei Torah yitgaru bam. Those who forsake the Torah praise the wicked, but those who keep the Torah contend with them. Rabbis tell us that one of the most dangerous Jews is a Jew that once learned Torah, observed mitzvot, and has left it, dropped everything. Does everybody here know what the term meshumad means? Meshumad is a Jew who became a Muslim or became a Christian, who left he left the Jewish people to convert. Well, that all depends. He can just convert and just mind his own business. The problem is that those who were once observant and converted, even though they can't really convert, but they adopted the Muslim way of life or the Christian way of life, they are dangerous. Why are they dangerous? Because now they're sympathizing with the other religion, with the other people. They know the language of the Jews, and they can betray their people. Now there's something psychologically wrong with them already, that they've moved over to the other religion, right? And guess what? According to the history books, the first alilat dam, one of the most craziest accusations in our history, is that we use Christian blood to bake matzot on Pesach. Did you ever hear that? The blood libels. It's such a crazy accusation. Why is it crazy? Because the Torah clearly says we can't drink blood. We can't use blood. Blood is asur. To make it in matzot, whoever came up with a wild idea, it's a fabrication. It doesn't make any sense. I once explained Kabbalistically, the reason why this came about, why we suffered so much for something so silly, it makes no sense, perhaps has to do with Mechirat Yosef and Ektonet Pasim, the selling of Yosef, and using blood of a goat to cover up that he was sold into slavery. Perhaps, otherwise, what does blood have to do with anything? We need to understand, and perhaps that is one of the explanations as to why this came about. But what were the Goyim thinking? How did they come up with this idea? Whoever gave this, it's clearly doesn't make sense. But according to the history books, it was a Jew that started the whole thing. A Jew that started the whole thing says, I know, it's our customs, it's our tradition. Oh, you know? Yeah. And of course, to cover up, they would slaughter, they would actually kill, the non-Jews would kill a Christian child just to show evidence in the courts that this in fact happened. This never happened. There are incredible stories of how the Jews were saved at the last moment from the mobs. And sometimes they were not spared. They suffered immensely. So who was the cause of this? Mishumadim, dangerous individuals who were once Torah observant, who were Jewish, and they left Ozve Torah. or as the Prophet says in different words, the greatest trouble, the greatest social trouble that Jews will have will be from Jews, not from non-Jews. We have problems from anti-Semites, but we've had more problems from our own brothers. So that's what he says over here. Ozve Torah Yahlelu Rasha. These individuals are dangerous. They praise the wicked. They look up to the wicked. The Shomrei Torah Yitgaru Bam. But those who observe the Torah, he translates over here, they will contend with them. What that means is that they will not flatter them. A tzaddik is not afraid to tell a Rasha in his face, you are a Rasha, you're doing something wrong. He will not flatter him. He will attempt to bring him back with tshuva to correct his wrongs. In other words, Shomrei Torah, those who are truly devoted, truly genuine Jews, Yitgarubam, they will contend with these people. They will not follow them. They will not praise them. Some people are very weak in their character, and they tend to try to get favors from those people who are in high position, because they want to perhaps get a promotion, a job, and it may involve flattering the wrong type of people. A true Ben Torah, a true observant Jew, does not do that. Not only does he believe that everything is in Hashemayim, he knows that it's a sur to flatter the Rasha. On the contrary, you have to give him musar, you have to tell him off. Otherwise he will think, as we've spoken about it in the past, that he's right. Nobody's told me anything. If nobody's going to tell him, how should he know? So he has to be reminded. Next pasuk, Anshe Ra lo yavinu mishpat u'mevakshei Adonai yavinu kol. Men of evil do not understand judgment, but those who seek Hashem understand everything. When something terrible happens, Anshe Ra, those who are evil, they don't understand that everything is in Hashemayim. They don't understand that everything is b'ashgacha, by divine providence. A lot of people really think that there's something called mikriyut. By chance, it just happens. Things don't just happen. That is a very important foundation in Judaism, a tremendous important foundation. It's part of our emunah, that there's a continuous hashgacha in this world. That Hashem did not only create the world, which many non-Jews believe too, but He actually continues to supervise. And things don't happen by chance. Things happen for a reason. And it's up to us to try to figure out. We may never be able to figure it out, but that leads to the famous question of why is it that the righteous suffer and that the wicked prosper? Tzaddik v'ra rasha v'tov lo. An individual who's ra, who all he does is pursue his own interest, has no desire to do mitzvot. Lo yavinu mishpat, they cannot understand that what is happening is mishpat lelokim. It is from above. There's a reason for it. Umevakshei Hashem yavinu kol, those who are mevakshei, the reason it uses here mevakshei, those who pursue or look for Hashem, is because they look to or try to understand why things happen. We may never understand fully why things happen, but at least we have some clues. The Torah writes, gives us some ideas of why certain things happen. There's a reason for everything. So those who are ra'im will never figure it out, because they won't even think that there is some reason for it. Those who are mevakshei Hashem, they will know that everything is b'ashgacha. Next pasuk, Tov ra sholech betumo me'ikesh derachayim v'hu ashir. A poor man who walks innocently is better than one of perverse ways who is rich. Okay, what we have here are two individuals. One who is olech betumo, as he translates it, he walks innocently. He's an honest man. And one who's perverse. He's wealthy. Now, what happens with those who are wealthy in this world? People tend to give them kavod and honor. People tend to look up to them, even respect them. And those who are simple are not looked up to too much. There was once a rabbi who had what's called in today's English, a near-death experience. He briefly passed away from this world. He wasn't feeling well. And then he came back an hour or two later. So I think it was his father who asked him, so what did you see upstairs? So he says, Olam hafuk ra'iti. I saw an upside down world. Those who are important here are nothing over there. Those who are nothing over here are very important up there. I saw an upside down world. He says, no, you saw a true world up there. Here it's a kol sheker. Here it's all bluff. It's a bunch of lies. You don't see clearly the truth. Just because somebody has money does not mean that he's a good man, that he should be given the respect, that he deserves any respect. What you saw there is the truth. There it's Olam HaEmet, here it's Olam HaSheker. So he says like this, Tov Ra Sholech Betumo, an individual who may be poor, but he walks innocently, he conducts business honestly, he's much better than one who is wealthy, but he's perverse. Where is he better? Well, I just told you he's definitely better upstairs where they know the truth. Obviously he's much more important. He's an innocent, he's an honest man. Who cares about how much money one made? But even down here the commentaries say he's better. The ish who's dal, but he's olech betumo, he will be in the end much more admired than one who is perverse and wealthy. Why? Because people will eventually figure out this wealthy man is not honest, he's not truthful, and therefore they will never rely on him, they will never trust him. They will always trust the individual who is poor and is innocent. And you can see this in business. A person who is honest in business will have a reputation. People will know he's honest, he doesn't cheat, he's reliable, a word is a word, you can trust him with your eyes closed. This man earned his reputation, of course, the hard way, and as Shlomo Melech points out in Kohelet, that's the best thing you can acquire in this world, is a good name for yourself, a good reputation. He who made his money in illegal ways, in perverse ways, people eventually will find this out, and they will not like him. They may flatter him, he may think that they like him, but they will know the truth. So this individual who is olech betumo is better off in this world and in the world to come. He's the one to truly admire. Why do I say to truly admire? Because when it comes to honesty, there are not too many honest people in this world. When it comes to money, people are very, very hungry. There's a big yetzer hara when it comes to making money. People will cheat you in many, many ways. Just to get a little bit more money, they will try to sell you a product that really is worthless. A product, why don't you buy this? It will make your hair grow back. People who are bald may be tempted. Hair grow back? Why don't you try? You've got nothing to lose. It's only $10. And what is he thinking? If 1 million people pay the $10, he's got it made. Because all these people are going to try it once and it's not going to work and they're not going to buy it anymore. But what is this man thinking? I don't care. Let them all buy one bottle. Is he honest? No, obviously not. But it's only $10. What's the big deal? $10. Why don't you try it? But you know for sure that it won't work. You know it won't work. Then why are you selling it? Trying to make an easy buck, they say? Yeah. Anyway, so when it comes to honesty, that's why he talks so much about honesty. Honesty is a very, very valuable ma'ala, and it's very much highly looked upon upstairs and downstairs. It's down here below. Next pasuk. Actually, before we go to the next pasuk, commentaries also tell us that on this pasuk of Tov Ra Sholech Betumo, that an individual who is sincere prepares Tzeidah Laderech. In other words, he prepares to go out on a long journey. When you go out on a long journey, you prepare to take with you food for the way, for the journey. One who is Tam Olech Betumo prepares himself with Tzeidah Laderech, in other words, with mitzvot and ma'asim tovim, so that he should have for Olam Haba. He does not just concern himself with Olam Hazeh. He conducts himself in such a way that he prepares for the world to come. Whereas an individual who is perverse does not think about preparing. He's so busy making money, he's so busy tricking people, taking advantage of people, that he doesn't have time to think, well, what am I going to do for my Olam Haba? Before you know it, when the time comes, the boat is about to leave, and we can't tell it to wait. It just takes us back to where, to Olam HaEmet. Time flies. So the Olech Betumo is always preparing himself to take Tzeidah Laderech. Next pasuk, Notzer Torah ben Nevin v'ro'eh zolelim yachlim aviv. He who keeps the Torah is the son of an understanding man, but he who befriends gluttons puts his father to shame. This pasuk is very important. It talks about the influence of the environment, and when a child is seen to be behaving himself, doing the right things, not only will he be praised, but his parents will be praised. Notzer Torah, one who's observant of the Torah, a child that observes the Torah, what will people say? Ben Mevin, he is the son of one who has understanding. The father apparently knew what to do. He invested his money in sending him to a good school, not to a public school, gave him a good Jewish education. And that is why he is Notzer Torah. He's protecting or watching over the Torah. He's keeping the Torah. He's the son of a Mevin. Parents will be praised for the success of their kids. But the opposite is also true. V'ro'eh zolelim yachlim aviv. And one who befriends gluttons. You know what a glutton is. Those who eat and drink a whole day. Zolelim. Yachlim aviv, he will embarrass his father. He's not only embarrassing himself, in the end, they look at the father. This is your son. This is what you raised. Even though we all have free will, and the one to really blame is the individual himself. But there's no doubt that parents are somewhat responsible because they do have some influence over the child. So it all comes back to the father, not only in this world, but obviously in the world to come, when they will ask the father and mother, why didn't you do for your son? You had the money to send him to a Jewish school. You sent him to a public school so that you should buy your BMW instead. You wanted to save money because Jewish school costs money, tuition. But some people have their priorities not in the right place. And then they complain, well, why did he marry a non-Jewish girl? Well, what do you expect when he's in a non-Jewish school? So in the end, it comes back to the father, whether it's good or bad. Commentaries explain that since the environment is so dangerous, it is a good idea for the father early on to have the son send his son to be amongst Talmidei Chachamim, because depending where you spend most of the time, you will absorb and you will become used to the habits of the Talmidei Chachamim. Because by spending time with people, you learn from them. So why not allow the son to be around good people, positive people? So something should stick to him instead of being around Zolelim. Zolelim are those who are always drinking and eating and having fun. Okay, next pasuk. Marbe hono b'neshech u'betarbit lechonen dalim yekabetzeno. There are some pasukim that he repeats for greater emphasis. We've spoken about this in the past. Very serious avon, and that is to charge interest on a loan to another Jew. Most loans should be free, especially if it's a chesed. One wants to make a bar mitzvah, a brit milah, and you need some money. You cannot charge interest for those kind of loans. And he says here, Marbe hono b'neshech u'betarbit, he who increases his riches with usury and interest gathers it from him who is gracious to the poor. Let me just say it in simple English. One who increases his wealth by charging interest on loans, in the end, the money that he made will end up going to income tax. In other words, the IRS will come after him. All the profit that he thought he made, all the riches that he thought he made from charging interest, that money has no beracha. It will go to the government that will spend it in whatever ways they think is important. So no beracha. Not only is it a sin, it's a serious avon, but it also has no beracha. Included in this is another example of a Jew who says as follows: I have $100,000 to lend. I'm not getting too much in my CD in the bank. They're only giving me this. I'm not going to lend the money to a Jew because I cannot charge him interest. So I'm going to lend it to a goy instead. This also is a surah. If you have the money and certain Yehudim need your help, then you have the mitzvah to help them, and not to give it to the goy just because you want to make interest. And the Jew, you won't be able to charge interest. That's also a surah. All this money, therefore, has no beracha, and therefore it somehow will disappear. I guess one could add another idea over here. This happens from time to time. People ask me, Rabbi, my business is not doing well. Maybe somebody gave me an ayn hara, an evil eye. Maybe somebody did some kishuf, some witchcraft. They're very superstitious. And when the first question I ask is, tell me, are you open on Shabbat? I say, yeah, I have to be open on Shabbat. He says, well, what do you expect? That's the first thing that you need to resolve. If you want to have beracha, you have to keep Shabbat. They always try to blame something else when they don't realize that the problem is themselves. They're trying to get a blessing, but in reality they're cursing themselves by working on Shabbat. How could they get a blessing if they're doing something wrong? Just like the one who's charging interest. What does he expect? All of a sudden he has this tremendous lawsuit. He says, what did I do wrong? Now I have all these bills, all these attorney fees. What did I do wrong to deserve this? He doesn't realize that 3 or 4 years ago he may have given a loan to someone and he charged him 12% interest for an entire year, made a lot of money. And all this money now, a couple years later, is going to disappear in attorney fees and the like. Hashem does not take it away the next day. Otherwise it would be obvious, right? If things would be obvious, then our free will would, it would be interfere with our free will. But down the road, Hashem takes it away. There's no beracha, there's no blessing. And any money that is made on Shabbat, any money that is made in a crooked way, any money that was made through charging interest, there's no beracha besides the avon, besides the terrible sin of charging interest. Next pasuk, Mesir ozno, Mishemoa Torah gan tfilato to'eva. He who turns his ear away from hearing the Torah, even what? Yeah, we covered that another time. There are certain loans that are business loans. Business loans, an example of a business loan is, let's say you want to buy a building, right? You're not making a brit milah or a wedding. You want to buy a business. You want to buy a building, and you want to borrow some money. Then there's something called heter iska. The one who lends the money wants to be a partner in this investment. He's entitled to be a partner. So even though it looks like he's charging interest, in reality he's forming a limited partnership of sorts with you. And he's entitled to that. Why should you be the one making the money and not me? That's the idea of a heter iska. You can. You need to. You need to be willing to lose money too. Oh no! It's completely permissible because it's like a partnership. As long as it's done properly, if it's done halachically properly, then in reality you're becoming like a partner in this investment, as opposed to a favor that somebody needs to marry off his daughter. He needs a couple $1,000 because he has 4 root canals and a couple dentures that he needs to implant. I mean, this could be expensive. Then you are, of course, obligated to do a chesed, an act of kindness with him, and lend him the money without interest. Because if you charge interest, then you're helping yourself. You're not helping him. You have the choice. If you don't want to lend him money because you need it yourself, that's something else. But you cannot charge interest if the individual needs money for something like some necessity that is not a business. Exactly. That's the difference between a heter iska and an ordinary loan. We're holding in the pasuk Mesiros no. Mishmoa Torah gam tfilato to'eva. Whoever turns his ear away from hearing the Torah, even his prayer is an abomination. There's a certain sense of hypocrisy here, similar to the one we spoke about before, the one who works on Shabbat and is asking where his blessing is. But you're working on Shabbat, what do you expect? One who does not want to learn Torah, one who turns his ear away from Torah, then even his prayer is an abomination. Why doesn't Hashem listen to my prayers? Because you have a disrespect for Torah. You turn your ear away from Torah. An example of being disrespectful to Torah is one who claims, I've already learned it. I already know it. I already know it all. That shows a lack of respect for Torah, and that's a form of hypocrisy in one's behavior. Here he believes in Hashem, he turns to Him, he prays to Him, he begs Him. On the other hand, he has no respect for the Torah. When we say no respect for the Torah, we also mean da Torah, not listening to what the rabbis have to say, being disrespectful of the opinions of Talmidei Chachamim. All of that is a form of disrespect. One has to be careful when they're reading the Torah not to walk out of shul or the Bet HaKnesset. That shows a disrespect for the Torah. One who talks in the middle of Kriyat Torah is disrespectful of Torah. If they offer you an aliyah, you have to be careful not to refuse an aliyah, unless you have some reason. You're in the middle of the prayer or something. You have to be very careful not to refuse an aliyah, because that shows that you don't want to go up to the Torah and to make a blessing in the Torah. One has to be very careful with giving kavod to the Torah. Otherwise, when he prays, Hashem will say, well, he doesn't give kabod to Torah. Why should I listen? Why should I pay attention to his prayer? He turns his ear away, I will also turn my ear away. So in these Pesukim, he's explaining to us that sometimes people don't understand why things are not going well for them. It's all in their behavior. It's not necessarily their mazal. You see, when somebody's not doing well, it could very possibly be it's just his mazal. We do have a mazal. We can change our mazal because Baruch Hashem, we have a special relationship with the Almighty, and through prayer, through tzedakah, through teshuvah, we can change our mazal. But otherwise, we have a mazal, and some people have a great mazal. They're very wealthy because of their mazal. They did nothing good in their life. They're corrupt, they're evil, they're no good from day one. But they have a good mazal. It's a mazal. Something may or may not happen to them at age 65 that will make the money go away. It may or may not. It's very difficult to know. They'll rectify the tikkun in the upper world or in another reincarnation. Hashem has his reasons why he wants that individual to live a nice, good life. For whatever reason. It could be when he was in the Israeli army at the age of 19, he saved somebody's life. He saved another soldier's life. And just for that alone, he deserves some credit. He put on tefillin one time in his life. Just for that alone, he deserves credit. He may have done something when he was young that none of us are aware of. And just because of that, Hashem is repaying him in this world. Next pasuk, Mashgei yesharim b'derech ra v'shechotohu yipol tmimi nechalutov. He who misleads the upright in an evil way will fall into his own pit, but the innocent will inherit goodness. There are some people who give bad advice. They want people to make a mistake. That's called Mashgei Yesharim. He's misleading them, b'derech ra. He's giving them bad advice or misleading them in some way. So he will fall in his own pit that he's made for himself. He's trying to cause other people to make a mistake by giving them bad advice. Then he will in the end fall in his own pit. Various Pesukim, you may have noticed, he points out that there is something called midah keneged midah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's relationship with us is measure for measure. In the way we behave unto others, that is the way Hashemayim will behave towards us. So here he's misleading certain individuals by giving them bad advice. In the end, something will happen. He will fall for it. Somebody will give him bad advice, for example, and he will make a terrible mistake. Mimin halutov, and those who are tmimim, those who are innocent, will inherit goodness. Because they help people, because they give good advice, Hashem will make it so that their advice will be really helpful, and they will be rewarded for their good advice. Anytime one can help an individual, just by saying something that could help, he's rewarded for that. Every act counts. Every act has some value, especially if it helps another individual. I've actually heard that there are some people who, if you approach them and ask them for directions, they will tell you the other way, go the other way, just to make you suffer, to go on the wrong direction, and by the time you realize that, there are people like that. They're evil. They want to mislead. They want, for whatever reason, they're sick. That's called mashgei yesharim. They may have an interest to mislead so they can gain. Who knows? There are people like that. That's why he talks about it. That's what he says. In the end, those who do that will fall. Next pasuk, Chacham be'inav ish ashir v'dal mevin yachkereno. Each man is wise in his own eyes, but a discerning poor man will search him out. One of the problems wealthy people have is they think the reason they're so wealthy, the reason they made it, is because they're very smart. It has nothing to do with smartness. A wealthy man could have become wealthy because of his mazal. He may be stupid. He may not even know how to speak a word of English. He has mazal. But he thinks he's a chacham. Chacham be'enav ish ashir. He thinks of himself as a chacham. That's of course overconfident. V'dal mevin yachkereno. One who is poor will search out. In other words, he will be discerning. A poor man who does not have too much confidence, he will always analyze a situation. He will not jump into anything without looking into it. He will not be overconfident. And that is the correct attitude, that a person should be careful that he should not to be overconfident of himself and give himself credit just because he's become very, very rich. I may have told you the story once of an individual who asked the rabbi for a blessing, the Chafetz Chaim. What blessing do you want? That I should be very wealthy. Why do you want to be wealthy? Rabbi, if I will be wealthy, you know how many mitzvot I can do? How many yeshivot I can build? So the rabbi says, yeah, that's what they all say. But when they become rich, they forget. Do you promise that, B'ezrat Hashem, when you become wealthy, you will do what you say? He says, yeah, B'ezrat Hashem. He gave him a blessing, and he Baruch Hashem, after a couple of years, became very wealthy. There was only one problem. The wealthier he got, the more difficult it was for him to give tzedakah. It came to a point that he became so rich that he couldn't even give $1. Nothing for tzedakah, nothing. He used to give. When he was poor, he used to give. Now he doesn't give even $1. Now he has more. Anyway, he felt terrible. He heard that the Chafetz Chaim was coming to town. Several years have passed since he saw that he's rabbi. So he was happy to see the Chafetz Chaim coming to town. He ran over to him with tears in his eyes. Rabbi, I'm sick. Can you help me? You're sick? You look healthy to me. No, you don't understand. I'm stingy. I can't open up my hand, tight like a fist, with tears in his eyes. And I know what I promised to you, what I would do, and I can't. I can't even open up my hand. So the rabbi smiled at him and he says, what did you think? That when your money would grow, your Yetzer Hara would stay the same where it was? Your money grew, so did the Yetzer Hara grow along with it. Your evil inclination. The more you have, the more difficult it will be for you to give. And that is true with most people. The more money they have, the richer they are, the more greedy they are. Right? You agree? Yeah.
That money may serve, sometimes it's good.
Yes, sometimes. Sometimes it could be a curse. But one thing is for sure. Anybody who has a lot of money, it's always going to be an nisayon, it's always going to be a challenge. How is he going to use the money? You have the challenge of wealth and the challenge of poverty. And the rabbis tell us that the challenge of wealth is much more challenging, much more difficult. Because the poor man is humble. The poor man, at least his heart is broken, he prays to Hashem. He won't come to sin so easily. The wealthy man always risks, always has, there's always the possibility that he will be very haughty, very arrogant, look down at people, abuse people, not help people. Even though he's got all the money, why don't you share the money? You have a couple $1 million. What are you going to do with it? Take it? You're not going to take it with you. When you leave it behind, your kids are going to spend it. And if you have no kids, the attorneys are going to take it. If there's no attorneys, the state will take it. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to make yourself air-conditioned grave, central air in the grave? I mean, what can you do with the money? Yeah. There was once a father who was very, very stingy. And he said in his will, I want all my money buried with me, not leaving anything behind. Everything buried with me. The kids felt terrible, but they couldn't tell their father anything while he was alive. The older son was smart. The time came, his dad left the world, took out all the money from the grave, and wrote his father a check. There are some very stingy people in this world, incredibly, and it's a disease. It's like a disease. We must realize that if we are blessed with money, it's because Hashem entrusted it to us, for us to help the poor. Why are they poor and rich? So the rich can help the poor. It's one of the tests in life. Not everybody succeeds in this test, in this challenge of wealth. There was one rabbi who prayed to Hashem that his children and all his descendants will always be poor. Why? Because they were like this, they will always be humble. He was afraid of wealth, because the wealth can turn one easily away from his religion, from his people. It could do terrible things. Like you said, it could be sometimes a curse. Sometimes. It could be a blessing too. You have to be very careful if you've been blessed with money to use it right. Next pasuk, Ba'alot tzadikim rabat tif'aret u'bekum reshaim yechupas adam. When the righteous rejoice, there's much glory, but when the wicked rise up, a person will be searched out. Again, a difficult pasuk to understand without the commentaries. Ba'alot tzadikim rabat tif'aret, it means that people gain a lot. Humanity gains a lot when tzadikim rejoice, when tzaddikim are in the position to help, when tzaddikim prosper. Because a true tzaddik does not rejoice himself. He wants everybody to rejoice with him. He wants people to succeed. Valos tzaddikim rabat tif'aret. It's a great contribution to humanity. It's a great benefit, I should say, to humanity when tzaddikim are in the position, when they are the ones who are running the show, when they are the ones who are succeeding, because they will want to share their success with others. They want people to be as happy as they are. As opposed to what? As opposed to v'kum resha'im yechupas adam. There's two meanings here. When resha'im are in power, when they are the ones who are running the show, yechupas adam, then all they're trying to do is lenatzel et adam, to take advantage of people. Look at the differences. A tzaddik wants others to be happy and others to succeed, others to do well, just like he did. I will share with you the secret of my success. That's a good man. Others says, no, I will not share with you the secret of how I did it. Do it on your own. A rasha not only does not share, but he looks for ways to take advantage of people. Just the opposite of the tzaddik. Be happy for others. You should desire and have an interest and pray that others should be happy. In the rasha, bekum rashaim yechupas adam. In other words, they try to look for ways to take advantage of people. That is one pirush. The second pirush, the second commentary, the second interpretation is as follows. Tzaddikim always look for the good in every individual. You want a secret on how to succeed with human beings, how to have a good relationship with every individual? Always look at the good that each individual has. And we all have something good and something not so good. We all have strengths and some weaknesses. If you only focus on the good, you will always get along with everybody. Because everybody has faults. Nobody's perfect. And if you only focus on the good, then you're not going to complain about him, you're not going to be upset at him, because you're going to focus and remember the good that he has. That's really one of the most important keys for a successful relationship with any human being, not just one spouse. And everybody has something good if you only look for it. And that is one of the ideas expressed in this pasuk. That tzaddikim look for the good in every individual. Rasha'im look for the mumim, for the defects, for the faults, for that which is negative. If you will look for the negative, you will find something. Okay, the last two pesukim are very important pesukim. Mechaseh pesha'av lo yatzliach umodeh ve'ozev yerucham, a very famous pasuk. He who conceals his sins will not succeed, but he who confesses and abandons them will obtain mercy. Mechaseh pesha'av. It's not a good idea for one to cover up or conceal his sins, because the first step for teshuvah is to admit. Now, when it comes to admitting, one has to be very careful not to admit in public those sins that are between him and God. One should not reveal one's sins between him and Hashem. One sin between him and his friend should say it publicly. I'm sorry I did this to him. That's something else. That's good. That's welcome and it's good. But between one and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, one should not reveal it. It's not nice. But in his prayer, he should admit it. One of the most important steps in teshuvah is vidui, is to confess, is to speak up, to take the thought, the good thought that you have, to repent and talk about it. I'm sorry, Hashem, I did this and this, and I want to correct it. So, mechaseh peshav, one who conceals, he doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to think about it, lo yatzliach, he will not succeed, he will never do teshuvah. There are some people that will have a very difficult time doing the teshuvah because they lack the first step. They can't get themselves to admit. You mean for the past 50 years I've lived like a goy? I've made mistakes? My kitchen is kosher, I got to throw out all the dishes? And what's wrong with that? Just go to Kmart and buy yourself a new set of dishes. It's not so difficult as it sounds. But it's hard for some people to let go. And therefore they would rather be covered up, forget about it, ignore it. Life goes on. Lo yatzliach, he will not succeed. Modeh ve'ozev yerucham, one who admits and lets go. You need the two conditions, to admit and to let go. A lot of people say admit. I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry. But they don't let go. They'll do it again tomorrow. How many times can you say I'm sorry? Now, the I'm sorry is very important. You should still say it. But it should be umodeh ve'ozev. It should really be a true commitment on the husband or the wife's part to let go, to stop doing it. Otherwise, what is it worth? Umodeh. It's important by itself, but it's not enough. Umodeh ve'ozev yerucham. Hashem will have pity on those who truly repent and let go. As the rabbi tells in the Gemara, something incredible. One who just did a sin, he just committed a sin, and he immediately repents, he immediately regrets it, then what will happen? Then eno zaz misham ad shemochalim lo. As soon as he repented, he doesn't even move from that spot. He will have already obtained mercy. He will have already received the mechila. What's going on? Just because he immediately repented, HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgives him. What's the power in the immediate repentance, in the immediate regret? The power is as follows. When somebody makes a mistake, he committed a sin bishgaga, unintentionally, and he feels bad, he feels terrible, and he says, I'm sorry. You know what that does? It shuts up the mouth of the kategor. It shuts up the mouth of the accusing angel. There's no more prosecution. It's like you coming to court, Your Honor, I'm guilty. No more jury. No more prosecution. It's very powerful. Now, it does not mean that he has a complete kapara. Kapara means to remove the stains on the neshama. That requires Yom Kippur. That may require some yisurim, some pain. That may require some tikkunim, like fasting and tzedakah, to remove the stains of the neshama. But at least there's no accusation. A person has to be very careful with accusations because they interfere in his life in many ways. That is the benefit of umodeh ve'ozev yirucham. If he admits it and lets go of it, then he will obtain mercy. And that is why this idea is also very helpful in a husband and wife relationship. We all the times make mistakes. We say something not nice. We did something wrong. At least admit it. Don't allow your ego to hold you back from admitting. There's nothing wrong with saying that you were wrong, that you did something wrong, you made a mistake. If it will bring shalom to the house, do it. Even if it's not your fault, still say it. As long as you mean it. Another interpretation of mechaseh pesha'av is one who conceals his sins. He thinks people are not going to find out, nobody's going to see him. He's wrong. In the end, lo yatzliach, Hashem will reveal it to the entire world. In the end, it will become public. So don't think you can get away with it by concealing it. And the last pasuk for tonight is also a very important pasuk. Ashrei adam mefached tamid u'machshel libo v'yipol bera'ah. Fortunate is the man who's always afraid, but he who hardens his heart will fall into evil. What should a person be afraid of? A person should always be concerned that even though life is going very well for him, it's going very well for him, and he knows that he hasn't been doing good things. Maybe Hashem is paying him for all his mitzvot in this world. He should be concerned. He should be concerned if everything is going smooth. A person should be concerned that the things that he has done wrong, that they should be repaired, because if not, Chaz V'Shalom, something may happen to him sooner or later. Why wait till it happens? Rabbis tell us that once a gezerah comes out in the Shamayim, a decree comes out, it's very difficult to annul, it's very difficult to cancel. Don't allow it to come down. So Ashrei Adam mefached tamid, a person should always be concerned about his deeds and go about correcting them, not assume that everything is okay. Always examining his deeds. That's a simple idea over here. Be concerned that if you did something wrong and he doesn't correct it, something may happen. Another interpretation is that if somebody was able to overcome a nisayon, he was able to withstand a challenge, he was able to be strong once upon a time, he should not be overconfident of himself that he will be able to succeed another time. Just because you were good last time, it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to do it another time. Just because you were strong once, it doesn't mean that you will be strong another time. So always be concerned and be careful in the situations that require caution. That not to be overconfident. That just because once you were able to be okay, that it will happen again. The last idea in this pasuk is that here Shlomo Melech seems to say that it's good for a person to be concerned. But his father David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Gam ki lech begeis al mavet lo irara. Even when I walk in the valley of death, I'm not afraid because Hashem is with me. So here, David is not afraid, and Shlomo HaMelech says you should be afraid. What's the answer? The answer is obvious, that when it comes to onashim and avonot, when it comes to sins and punishment, obviously one has to be concerned. One cannot think for a moment that he's a complete tzaddik. He has to see perhaps there's something that needs correction, something that he did wrong. He has to consult, he has to look into his ma'asim, always has to examine himself and be concerned that perhaps something may happen if he doesn't correct himself. But when it comes to general fear of the world, of people, of our enemy, David HaMelech is talking about a general situation where a Jew has to have complete trust and faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he will protect him and not to be afraid of the enemy. Obviously, you don't want to put yourself in a dangerous situation to begin with. But when you walk, when you live your life, you can't think about what will happen, what they're going to do. Now this guy in Iran is crazy. He's a fanatic. He's threatening. You can't worry about these things. We have to, of course, strengthen our ma'asim and do what is right and put our complete trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu that just like in the past He has watched over us, He will continue to watch over us in the future as well.